Good morning, Mark Suttoth, HurricaneTrack.com, here with your hurricane outlook and discussion for the first day of September 2017. I'm near Atlanta, Georgia, on my way back home from Texas. Get there tonight, this evening, and we'll be watching Irma, obviously, over the next several days very closely. The latest on Irma, we're going to get to in a moment. Let's look at Harvey real quick. A depression still over Tennessee, and the biggest problem with this is going to be the slight, but certainly there, potential for tornadoes. You see this line of storms here pushing through western North Carolina and down into Georgia and parts of extreme eastern Alabama. The tornado threat through this region, slight to moderate, meaning up to a 10% chance in some areas. The bottom line is the more sunshine that we get in this area to destabilize the atmosphere as this moves through over the next several hours means the possibility of tornadic thunderstorms developing. And so keep your NOAA weather radios handy, your smartphones on so you get the alerts, that screeching tone. I want to make sure we keep you safe. And then, of course, fairly heavy rainfall up here on the north side of the shield of precip as this interacts with a front and that moisture gets wrung out. So just keep that in mind, that Harvey is not completely gone just yet. So let's look at the latest here from the National Hurricane Center. The 11 o'clock advisory just coming out, and the winds are down just a little bit to 110 miles per hour. This is going to fluctuate back and forth and then probably get stronger later on as it moves off to the west. And then eventually the west-southwest. If we look at if this will pop up for me, the forecast track map from the National Hurricane Center, resuming the major hurricane status here within the next couple of days. And you never know, it could do so sooner. As I'm going to show you in a minute, it's going to start encountering higher upper ocean heat content within the next couple of days. And then you see, maybe a bit of good news here, the center of circulation. That's what the black dot is. That's the eye. That's the center. The hurricane is not a dot, but luckily in this case, at least for now, Irma is fairly small. But this shows the center line, if you will, the eye, presumably staying away from the Lesser Antilles for direct hurricane impacts, but you just never know, right? And so we're going to need to be watching this closely. That southwest jog, I think, is going to be very important. How much does it, first of all, does it occur at all? Unless it happens, the models are just guidance, and then once it happens, you can verify the forecast. But this southwest jog, assuming that it happens, if it's on the southern side of the cone here, you can almost look at this as an envelope, the overall envelope of the potential track area. Well, that's going to be very problematic, obviously. And, of course, if it's on the northern side of this, then it's looking a lot better for those of you down here in the Lesser Antilles. For you folks in Barbados and points south and west from there down to Trinidad and Tobago, this is not your hurricane, and I can say that definitively. Now, we do need to be watching what could be coming in from out here, potentially later on, but we have plenty of time to deal with that. It's not even materialized yet, so we don't have to worry about it too much. Looking at the satellite picture this morning, again, this moisture feed coming into the southeast, any sunshine that breaks out through here, reminder there you could get some tornadoes, so please stay alert. Here's Irma out in the open Atlantic. Really not much to point out with this. We're just watching it right now. It's so far out there. We have not had a long track Cape Verde hurricane that I can recall of this nature since 2008 with Ike. We've had some that formed, farther to the west and then got started. Think about 2011 with Hurricane Irene. That was much farther to the west once it got going. So really it's just a matter of watching and seeing where this ends up. There's an upper level low right here, and everything's moving in tandem. There's really not much shear going on. Maybe a little bit of Saharan air layer out here getting ingested into the system, but it's way less than it was before. And then this is what I really want to point out. Over the next few days, Irma will encounter these warmer upper ocean heat content area. And so the water at the surface needs to be around 80 degrees Fahrenheit or higher, somewhere around there to get your classic tropical cyclone. There are different processes that you can get like we saw back in April with the first hurricane, or the first named storm of the year, with Alex, I believe it was, right? And it was just, over colder sea surface temperatures, right? That's not the point here. A classic tropical cyclone in the season usually needs 79, 80 degrees at the surface, but if that water is warm to a depth of 50, 100, 200 meters or more, then you've got warm water that can be churned up and whipped around, and you're just whipping and churning up warmer water, more warm water, that is. And so that's what we call the upper ocean heat content, and it gets higher and higher the farther west you go, with the highest being over here in the Caribbean Sea, especially the western Caribbean Sea. With Irma, it'll be passing into warmer sea surface temperatures at the surface and warmer upper ocean heat content values, or higher values, I should say. And we're going to be moving into the middle part of the scale here. So that should lead to some significant intensification, and usually when they move to the southwest, they really start to intensify after they have completed that. So this will probably become a very intense hurricane, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if this becomes a Category 5, and it's going to fluctuate back and forth. You'll see. The eye wall will collapse, a new one will form outside of that one and then contract, and that process will repeat. But there's very light shear, very warm ocean temperatures, only to get warmer. And so this is going to do a couple of things as it intensifies. The swells that are going to be generated are going to be radiating out, and those are going to eventually impact the Lesser Antilles here before any arrival of tropical storm or hurricane conditions would ever get there, if they do. And then eventually, no matter where this ends up, if it just turns between Hatteras and Bermuda, as an example, you're going to have these just amazing swells coming in, and that could be a dangerous thing because they're going to be huge if this is a large Cat 4 or 5. The surfers are going to love it, but beachgoers, at least this weekend coming up, the Labor Day weekend, no problem. I want to make that very clear. No problems at all from swells or anything from Irma for the Labor Day weekend coming up for the east coast of the United States. After that, as this gets closer, it could be a problem, and I will address that when the time comes. All right, so let's start looking at the models here, okay? This is from Levi Cowan's website, tropicaltidbits.com, and want to make sure he gets the credit here because he has done such a great job making these available. So this is the 0Z run from last night. The European model and the GFS model are two supposed to be powerful global models that are supposed to be reliable. Set that, first, all right? So the Euro typically does better, especially with the 500 millibar pattern, beating the GFS fairly consistently. That being said, let's take a look at what we've got. So this is the run from last night. The 0Z part means that this was initialized at 0Z or Zulu time or 8 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. The model is initialized. It's kind of like that's when it began, the initial conditions. So this is the initial map from 8 o'clock last night. And you can see there's Irma out in the open Atlantic. And what we can see here is the surface pressures and isobars, lines of equal pressure, and the colors that you see, the greens, the yellows, the oranges, and then the crimson color, represent the heights of the atmosphere, like mountains or valleys of air. Okay? So this would be like a mountain of air. This air is taller in the atmosphere than this air, so to speak. That's a simple way to put it, so you can understand it. And Irma cannot just go into the mountain. Like, you can't drive into a mountain. You have to either go around it, or sometimes they blast tunnels through, and that's a story for another day. But you get the analogy. So Irma's just going to kind of move along with the flow of this high pressure that's sitting out here, making it go around the high pressure. All right? So let's move through the frames. Hopefully you understand so far. And I'm going to get rid of some of these. That'll help spread my tabs out. 24 hours out, this is valid tonight at 8 o'clock. Look what happens. That mountain of air gets larger and spreads across the Atlantic, and that keeps Irma from turning north, and eventually it's going to force it off to the west-southwest with time. Okay, so there's 24 hours out. This is 48 hours out. Now Irma is south of the ridge of high pressure, and this thing expands and contracts. It almost like it breathes. And Irma's to the south of it, so it's moving along, probably losing latitude at this point, meaning that it is moving south of west, all right? So that's 72 hours. This is 96 hours. And it's still being pushed more to the south than it is allowed to come to the north, all right? So then at 120 hours, it sort of steadies itself out, and it's moving closer here to the Lesser Antilles, but still east enough from, say, Guadeloupe right there that, you know, it certainly has time to miss, so to speak. And then you notice, got to point it out, another system developing here to the south and west of the Cabo Verde Islands, and we're going to certainly want to keep an eye on that. The next thing we need to look at, and if you hadn't figured out that this video is going to be lengthy today, well, here you go. This trough. Let's color it. Let's use blue. Okay, blue is going to be easier to stand out. This is digging in over the nation's midsection, and that's called a trough. This is a lower pressure in the atmosphere, and that tends to try to erode away these ridges and move them around. They all push up against each other, and so we need to really watch what happens with this trough feature right here from this point out. All right, so that's day 5, and now normally I wouldn't go past day 5, but what I want to show you are what we are going to be looking at down the road in the operational models. You can look at the ensemble models, which are lots of different variations of the operationals, but this video could be an hour long if we do that. So I want to look at the operational and look at the puzzle pieces, the major pieces that I watch myself when I'm trying to determine whether or not something's going to have an impact, and therefore, well, I have to go out into the field, all right? So this is how I do just that. So this is day 5. This is day 6 from last night's run, and you notice the trough gets deeper there. So we go back to day 5, there's day 6, and Irma is just skirting the northern Antilles down there. Pretty close call on this one. You know, certainly, depending on how large it is, the possibility of hurricane force winds would be there. So we just, you know, this is 6 days out. It could change. So remember that. Now let's go to day 7. And now you see what happens. This is where it really starts to get interesting. This is day 5, day 6, day 7. You notice that the energy with the trough from day 6 to day 7 starts to lift out. And that's very important. And this is where it becomes extremely important, because we're talking a week out, and we're trying to predict with these models, will there even be Irma here, you know, in that exact location versus where this weakness in the ridge is. In other words, this is not linked up all the way over into the United States like that, or this would just get driven into the Gulf of Mexico or maybe even the Yucatan. It's not that way. We have this jackhammer, if you will, pounding away on the western side of this ridge, creating a way out, theoretically. But everything's changing all the time. It's always moving and always changing. These are just snapshots, okay? So whether or not this is here, or if it's farther south or west, or if it's slower, timing and position are going to mean everything. And we have said that so many times over the course of my career, it's not even funny. And in this case, it's not funny at all, because this has serious implications on what happens. Timing and position. So at day 7, this is what we see from the Euro from last night's run. All right, so now let's compare that to the same time frame from last night's GFS. Okay, now the GFS already has Irma farther north and east. There's the Euro, there's the GFS, and the Euro is you know, considerably to the south and west, so it's a little faster, and the GFS is a little slower but more north. But that's just talking about Irma, okay? Let's forget Irma for just a second, that it's not even there. What do we see? We see the trough up here trying to lift out, right there, starting to lose its amplification. And then there's a piece of it kind of left behind over here. And then the ridge is trying to nose its way in, and it's a little bit larger. So I really don't understand how Irma could be that far north like that, but the GFS is notorious for doing that. The differences here are pretty stark, that the Euro is not showing the split at this time. The GFS does, but the timing and the position of Irma on both of them are also fairly different. I won't say markedly different, but they're there. Now I want to show you something else that just makes it more confounding. This is the 12Z run from yesterday. So it's coming up on about 24 hours ago now. Notice what happened yesterday on the Euro. It, at the 160-hour, the week out time frame, and they don't match up exactly. So this will be a week ago from yesterday morning, but it shows everything flattening out up here. The trough has split away with an upper level low, kind of backing away here over Louisiana and Arkansas, and quite a bit more ridging here over the north of Irma, and Irma is much farther south, and it ends up going into the Florida Straits by day 10. That was yesterday. So my point is, that's yesterday's run on the Euro. That's last night's run. What a marked difference, not where Irma is necessarily, but in the 500 millibar pattern. Wouldn't you say? Yesterday was putting it into position to where it could hit, for sure, kind of thing. You know, like, oh yeah, there's no way out. Last night, maybe there's a way out. But this is 168 hours out in time. That's a long way out. Now, before I wrap things up, I want to show you last night's GFS in the 500 millibar pattern, and you get an idea here that this is a week out. It looks fairly similar overall. Let me see if I can figure out. This is what am I looking at? Okay, yes, comparing the two runs. So this is the week out on the last night's GFS, initialized at 0Z. You got to forgive me, there's a lot to cover here. And then this is just 6 hours later. And so my point, as I wrap it up, even in the same model, 6 hours later, you see and what am I trying to show you? I should point that out. There's the trough split right there. You see the energy up here, it's trying to lift out. And there's the ridge. You can see the shape of the ridge right there. There's Irma, okay? And so just 6 hours later on the 6Z run, in other words, it's initialized again at 2 a.m. Eastern Time. So it's 8 p.m., 2 a.m., 8 a.m., 2 p.m. So just 6 hours later, that's the result at 168 hours out. Sharper trough, still dug deep along the eastern seaboard. And you see that? There's more ridge in the way in the 0Z than there is in the 6Z. It can drive you batty. All right? So we're going to look at this from time to time, but I'm not going to do this every video update because we're not going to get anywhere if we do that. What I want to point out is how complex this is. Yet there are big puzzle pieces that we can watch throughout, and then we can try to see how things are going to evolve. So the bottom line, we got a long way to go. Lesser Antilles would be up first, so to speak, with any impacts. Swells coming in are going to be the first. And then from there, we might need until Monday before we get an idea of direct impacts on the Lesser Antilles. So stay tuned, as they say. Just a quick reminder, you all support what I do. We are crowdfunded for almost all of our funding. So if you want to become a patron on Patreon, we have that. And, of course, we have the PayPal. Had PayPal since 2003. That's a long time ago now, isn't it? So if you want to help support my efforts and the team that's behind me, all of our expenses and everything, we appreciate it. And for those of you that have chipped in the last few days since I've started really talking about this, I got a positive lecture from a few people that I need to start doing this or I'm not going to be able to continue because we're going to run out of money. Thank you. It's been awesome, but we have a long way to go. I don't want it to overshadow by any means the need for donations monetarily and materially to the people in Texas and Louisiana dealing with Harvey. That comes first. But you know what? If you have a way to help us too and keep this going, it's very much appreciated, and your support goes a long way. So we can put gas in the tank and pay for the hotel rooms and the servers and the equipment, and on it goes. So thank you very much. Now, with the begging for money side done, I hate doing that, but if I don't, who will, right? Who's going to look out for me in our operation here? I'll be back home in North Carolina this evening, and you bet I'm going to be on top of this over the weekend. And like I said, I'm going to reiterate again, not all these videos are going to go into this much detail, because that's just going to drive you crazy. Every once in a while, we'll look at things, especially if there's a big change, all right? Most of them are going to be pretty straightforward since it's still way out there and much shorter, all right? So just keep that in mind. Thank you for watching, not only today, but all during the Hurricane Harvey coverage, the Tropical Storm Harvey coverage, and the big flood event in Texas. Made a lot of new friends on social media, made some new friends in person out there, and that's very valuable to me as well. And the support, not only monetarily, money's what makes the world go round, but your words of encouragement, saying thank you to me, etc., that really means a lot too. So I'm going to say thank you back to you for being a part of all of it on your side. I'm Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com. Thanks as always for tuning in. I'll have more for you over the weekend after I'm back home in North Carolina.